This episode of The Startup Life is brought to you by People Ready. Startup Nation, you have a lot on your plate. The last thing you need to stress about is finding quality staff or the available work you need to be successful. Save time and headache by working with a trusted staffing partner that meets your everyday needs. People Ready is a national staffing provider with over 600 locations across the country and 30 plus years of experience serving people just like you. They specialize in a variety of industries including retail, manufacturing, logistics, general cleaning, hospitality, construction, and more. People Ready understands that you're busy and on the go. That's where their mobile app, JobStack, comes in. Use the app to place orders or find work 24/7 or wherever you are. And as social distancing continues to change the way we interact with customers, colleagues, and our everyday lives, JobStack provides the ability to find the right temporary workers or work you need while eliminating the amount of physical touch points needed in the staffing process. Visit peopleready.com/startup life to learn more about how you can partner with People Ready.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation. So I hope you're ready to receive some value today. My name is Dominic Lawson, and this is The Startup Life, the show for entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals. You know, Startup Nation, this new normal has us all shifting our business models. And that doesn't matter if you're a small organization with a few employees or part of the C-suite of an NFL franchise. And speaking of the latter, our guest knows a little something about that. He is a graduate of the Wharton School and received an MBA at the University of Oregon. He is also the former vice president at ESPN, where he was responsible for college sports marketing and sport sponsorship activation. He is currently the chief marketing and revenue officer of the Tennessee Titans. He is Gil Beverly. GB, what's going on, my man?
I'm hanging in, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, no worries, man. Look, we're very excited to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on, man. You think you can help us out today? Give us some knowledge for Startup Nation today, man?
I can do my best. You know, that's all I got. But
Fair
yeah,
enough.
hopefully I can help out a little bit.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. So, you know what, man? If you would just kind of share your origin story and your background a little bit. Who is Gil Beverly?
So, you know, I think my sort of real life began sort of mid-20s. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life.
Sure.
Decided that, you know, I really wanted to follow my passion professionally. And at age 25, 26, you don't really have a real, you know, wide understanding of that. At least I didn't. And what I was really into at the time was sports. And so I went back and started volunteering at the athletic department of my alma mater at the University of Pennsylvania, which eventually led to a full-time job working for the basketball team, which was great.
Right.
And then from there is when I went to, after doing that for almost 3 years, I went to University of Oregon, to the Warsaw Sports Marketing Center. I struck up a great friendship with Jim Warsaw, who was the program's founder. And at the time, it was one of the best sports marketing educational institutions in the country, still is.
Right.
And then from there, I got an internship at the NFL league office in New York between my first and second year. Worked hard, lived at the office, and that led to me getting a full-time job after graduation at the league office. Did, you know, in the marketing and sponsorship realm there. Did that for a few years, 2 or 3 years, and then had a relatively long career at ESPN in a number of functions. But as you noted in the intro, I was most known for my work in college sports. Both in the sort of marketing and promotion, but also working with the college football sponsors across ESPN, and particularly as it pertained to the college football playoff. Then from there, left New York, moved to Dallas, worked for Learfield IMG College for a couple of years, working with a range of colleges and universities, managing their sponsorships and marketing. And then finally, I got a call from the Tennessee Titans about a year and a half ago, and I've been in Nashville ever since.
I heard that. Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you something about your days at ESPN and working on the college football marketing realm, because, you know, when I think of ESPN and I think of, you know, college football, I mean, there's one thing that comes to mind. That's College Game Day. I want to ask you this. like, because the thing is, like, that thing is like this marketing powerhouse that just works well for everybody. It works well for the school, works well for ESPN, and it just works well for everybody involved. Talk about that impact when it comes to exposure and marketing, when it comes to a behemoth like a College Game Day.
Well, I mean, what it is, it's a traveling party.
Right.
And who doesn't like parties? It's a traveling party leading into the big show, which is usually the best football game of the weekend.
Right.
And so when you take this traveling party to a college campus, which is, for whether you're in college now or you're older and you kind of look fondly back on your college days, or even if you didn't go to college, but you lived in a college town or
right.
cheered for a school, there was something special about College Game Day. And so to sort of distill that into a 3-hour show, including, physical presence on the ground on campus, and usually in really cool, areas of the campus. So you got views of the quad or the stadium or whatever the case may be. And then the producers always did a good job of giving the show a little bit of local flair.
Right.
So telling a story about the local town, the best barbecue joint or whatever. And so it just felt like you got a little piece of, what was going on at the biggest game of the weekend, from your living room. And then from a marketing standpoint, for sponsors to be able to draft behind that, and
right.
with obviously the Home Depot has become almost synonymous with the show
for sure.
But there are others as well that have been activating with that show for a decade. So it's a great opportunity to reach college fans. It's a really good show, and it'll be interesting to see how it evolves post COVID. But
right.
I have a lot of good memories for being a part of that.
Are there any big differences between like marketing and targeting like college fans versus like pro fans? Are there any like big differences that you've ever seen or that you have to take account of or something like that?
Marketing is marketing.
Fair
so,
enough.
you kind of go through the same fundamental process as you think about it.
Right.
But yeah, there are some differences. I mean, the fan bases are similar in the sense of, if you look at demographics or whatever, I believe the college fan's slightly younger.
Right.
So that there's some differences there. I think, in college, you have to be a little bit more careful about how you represent the athletes. Because they're not professionals.
Right.
So there's some dynamics there. And you still kind of have to be mindful of the dual mission involved in college sports, which is to educate players and student athletes as well as the actual competition. Whereas, professional sports, it's a little more simple. They're to win games and
right.
and sell tickets.
Right.
So it's a little bit simpler at the pro level, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Well, since you talk about that, because I mean, we're talking about, the Tennessee Titans who were knocking on the door of the Super Bowl just last year. So I'm curious about this from a marketing standpoint as well. When you have like a successful team and a successful product out there, does that make your job just a little bit easier, or is it like one of those things where it's easier, but there's a lot more to do now? I guess I'm curious about that.
Well, I always tell people, now keep in mind, I've only been with the Titans 1 year. So winning's all I know, you know what I mean?
Fair enough.
So, but that being said, we started off 2-4.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of me feels like I experienced 2 different seasons last year.
Right.
And so the way I tell people is, I became smarter. My jokes were funnier, and my wife loved me more once we started winning. So yeah, life does become a little bit easier. But look, even if you're about your business and you're a good brand, a good organization, you don't change your approach. It's not like, oh, we went 7-2 to end the season, now we can chill out. It's like, no, how do you lean into the curve, right? Like, hey, we got some momentum going, downhill or whatever. Let's press the accelerator. And how can we just completely, take advantage of this? Because, it's funny if you're reading Twitter today, the Jaguars are basically getting rid of all their good players. And
Ooh,
they
shots
were
fired. I see within the division.
Look, that's just the objective truth. They traded away their best defensive player earlier in the week, and then they cut Leonard Fournette this morning.
That's true.
They were in the AFC Championship game, whatever it was, 2 or 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So my point being is you don't know how long these good times will last in the NFL. I believe in our team, and I think we're set up for sustainable success. But things happen, right? So when things are going well, you gotta leverage that for all you can. So once it kind of became clear, we're pretty good. We started throwing everything we could against it, trying to get people as fired up as possible. We threw more parties. We did more social activations online. We did, we came up with a playoff a marketing campaign. Our tagline was "Take Everything," because our feeling was we weren't really invited. We kind of crashed the party, but now that we're here, we're going to take it all, and we almost did. So it does become. Let's put it this way. I don't know if it becomes easier, but it definitely becomes more fun when you're winning.
Fair enough. And I remember that period last season during the playoffs where you guys did a phenomenal job with not just the engagement that you were talking about, but also the dramatic videos with the big time running back King Henry and the QB and stuff like that. I just want a big shout out to your QB and your running back for getting me to a fantasy league win last season. So, I appreciate that for sure. But I want to ask you this really quickly. How do you come up with those campaigns? Is it kind of do you go through the drawing board with a script? Is it just kind of off the cuff? I'm just kind of curious about that part. Take me behind the curtain a little bit, if you don't mind.
What's funny is I remember when we came up with Take Everything, and the moment. And it's funny because I went to 2 of the best business schools in the country, and they talk about ideation and innovation and processes and how it's also you whiteboard things and this, that, and the other. The reality of it, man, was, and that can work, by the way, and sometimes you need to do that. But in this case, I feel like there were 5 or 6 of us. We were coming up against a deadline. It was like, if we want to do billboards, if we want to do this, commercials, whatever, we kind of need to get rolling. And we didn't have anything yet. We didn't have a theme that we liked. We were talking about different areas we could, tap into. And, we don't talk about Greek mythology all that often because I want the team to be really more, even though we're the Titans, right? But I want the team to be more positioned and recognized to be the team of Nashville and the team of Tennessee.
I hear that.
And then the mythology piece is kind of lower on the list. It's still there, but it's not what we focus on. But we were just kind of, at that point, we're throwing everything against the wall. And there's a line in the movie 300 where King Leonidas, the central hero, says, for leading into the climactic, final battle, give them nothing, but take from them everything.
I hear that.
And someone's like, and I'm like, that's too long. And then someone's like, why don't we just say take everything? Boom. It just sounded good.
Right.
And you got to be careful because you want to come up with something that fires people up, fires players up, fires the fan base up, but skirts the line between that and being arrogant and talking trash.
For sure.
And so we felt like that this was aggressive, it was in your face, but it wasn't disrespectful.
For sure.
So we enjoyed that.
For sure. I'm always, fascinated when it comes to marketing. The best, slogans or campaigns are very simple. Not simple in the sense of not good or anything like that, but simple in the sense of it's easily to be, you can be easily received. It's easily understood.
Yep.
There isn't a lot of esoteric thinking or whatever the case may be. It's just boom, in your face, take everything. And it really does rile the fan base up. And it really did seem like it was a big hit for you last season.
Yeah. I mean, I think the key is you find something that's organic and authentic to your product.
Right.
And your organization, and ideally something that works on multiple levels. Again, for us, it wasn't just about winning games. Like I said, we're the Tennessee Titans, and from our standpoint, and I'm living it because like I didn't think much of the Titans before I, start working here, and not that I thought that they weren't good or they weren't a negative. I just literally didn't think much of them. They just weren't on my radar.
Right.
And so, there's a vein of that throughout our fan base where we just don't feel like we get our due. And I've kind of learned that over being here for a year. Like we've won a lot. We just haven't won big. Like we're one of three teams that have had 4 straight winning seasons. I'm sorry, one of 4 teams. There's 3 others.
Right.
And so that's a really, going back to my Jaguars example, like they thought they were poised to win, hey, we were knocking on the door. Next year, we'll be right there.
That's
and
true.
We haven't heard from them since, right?
Right.
We've had sustained success, but we don't get the sort of respect at the national level. When people talk about the best teams and this, that, and the other, and the best players, and that's starting to change with Derrick Henry and Tannehill, given the year that they had, and AJ Brown. But going back to our mindset last year, it's like we want to take everything on the field, and by the way, we're taking everything off the field. Like you're going to know who we are. And so that was kind of our mindset. Like, you don't know us, you might not respect us, but you're going to hear from us now. We're going to take it all,
for sure.
Both on and off the field. And so when you say that, it's a very simple line, it's 2 words,
right?
But it really captured the essence of the 2019 Titans. And the organization as a whole as to where we were and where we wanted to be. And it really came together nicely.
For sure. And I appreciate you sharing that. And Startup Nation, that's kind of why I wanted to hint at that, because like a lot of times, look, I mean, let's be honest. Sometimes when we start a business or we have a marketing campaign, we start to do the most a little bit. And so sometimes simple is just better. So GB, I really appreciate you sharing that, man.
Yeah, no, trust me, I love talking about that. That was fun.
For sure. For sure. So I want to ask you this, because you talk about the fan base. Obviously, the Tennessee Titans are based in Nashville. They are in the state of Tennessee. But, how you do your marketing and the geographical footprint goes well beyond Middle Tennessee. Kind of talk about that. I imagine it goes up into Central Kentucky and over here where I'm at in West Tennessee and stuff like that. Kind of talk about that geographical footprint and how you market to that footprint, even outside of Nashville.
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, actually, and I'm going to break a little news. Here.
Okay, sure. Exclusive.
It's not exactly exclusive. If you watch this closely, if you watch this closely, you will have picked up on this
for sure.
But our tagline going into this season is Tennessee Tough. Okay. And the reason we're tapping into Tennessee Tough, again, from where we sit, there's multiple levels to it. Now, at its most literal, it's, hey, we want to be a tough football team, right? We're hard-nosed, we're smart. And frankly, to the degree to which the Titans have had a brand identity, when times have been good, it's always been grounded in toughness, going back to the Eddie George and Steve McNair days.
Of course.
And so that's at its most literal. But, if you look at traditionally what the top economic drivers of this state have been, it's farming and industry. Right. Two spaces that are identified heavily with toughness. And so paying homage to that, because that's who our fans are. That's what they're doing. That's where their space of mind is, especially in today's world. And that's the next level. In this region, over the last, whatever it's been, 8 months, we've been hit with a tornado that we were recovering from, COVID, really devastating economic factors.
Absolutely.
And then you throw in all the unrest and conflict driven by some of the issues surrounding race that we're all dealing with together.
Right.
And then, for us here in the heart of Nashville, the other driver of the economy here is tourism and entertainment. And people don't think of entertainment as being a tough industry, but I'm here to tell you, man, you're sitting there working for nickel, singing and dancing for nothing.
Big facts.
Trying to come up, right?
Right.
So it takes a lot of toughness and resilience and grit to come up in that space as well. So when you kind of pull all that together, we feel like our team and regional identity really centers around toughness in the midst of what's been a tough year with frankly no end in sight.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
And so some of our communications that you're going to see from us as we get to the season are really going to speak to that
Hmm.
and to honor that in terms of, how things have impacted our fan base, and hopefully, tell a story of a tough football team and how we're approaching the season.
For sure. I appreciate that. And I was going to ask you about that part, but since we're already here, let's kind of dive into that a little bit. Because, I mean, even if you've been hiding under a rock the past 3 months, COVID still kind of, you found your way and you know about it and stuff like that, Startup Nation. So there's just no way escaping it. So when you talk about an NFL franchise and its main product a bit being compromised a little bit, how do you shift gears, with that, because this is kind of something that's, a little bit unprecedented. You know what I mean? When it comes to sports and stuff like that, kind of talk about that transition a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I'm not going to tell you that it's a normal time because it's clearly not.
Of course.
But, from a marketing standpoint, my ambition for the team and our brand is to develop, 24/7, 365 day a year relationships with our fans.
Mm.
And at the end of the day, the in-stadium experience is something of a crown jewel of that relationship.
Right.
But it's really, the vast majority of our interactions with our fans occur outside of the stadium. So, whether you're talking about social media, whether you're talking about, merchandise sales, you're talking about, TV coverage, whatever the case may be, like the manifestations of our brand and product are much more varied and deeper outside of the stadium. Now, and some, you can argue, and rightfully so, that that's the best part of the relationship if you are a ticket holder,
Right.
And I certainly wouldn't argue that, but the reality is that there's still a lot that we can, should, and need to do to continue that relationship, despite not having the opportunity to host fans in the stadium. And we have always been committed to that. And
Right.
if anything, this, one of the first things I did, when I started working for the team was green lighting our production team to fly to Hawaii to do a mini documentary on Marcus Mariota,
Right.
and telling his origin story in a really cool way, in a really authentic way where he's from. And that was insanely popular. And those are things that we still can do. Like we had over 100,000 people interface with our pre-draft virtual party in April, which was hosted by Eddie George and some others, and with some celebrity guest appearances and things like that.
Right.
So, the stadium only holds 70,000, so like, again, I'm not here to tell you that the stadium isn't important and isn't maybe the best thing that we do. But what this situation has done is it's put a premium and accelerated the need to do some things we've already been trying to do, which is, how do we engage our fans every day of the week at any given time to meet them where they are, wherever they are. And so that's what the focus has to be. But frankly, that's where the focus needed to be before COVID. And if anything, this has just sort of accelerated that trend.
For sure. And I appreciate that. And Gil, one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on the show, because, I actually covered the 3686 Entrepreneurship Festival, which you spoke at. And you said, some phenomenal things that I was very curious about. But in that same vein of what you're talking about, one of the things you said was that you're in competition with everything in the living room. Right. And so, and so maximizing on those relationships outside of the stadium, outside of, the normal way you kind of engage with fans, it seems really important to you. So as you, continue to move forward in that direction, what do you hope to kind of gain, right? Like you already have a foothold outside, but it seems like you're trying to go even further with that. What are you ultimately trying to gain? Is it just to maintain the relationship? Is to get more of the relationship? What's the ultimate goal in that strategy, if you don't mind me asking?
That's a very broad question. I'll try to answer it.
That.
You tell me. Oh, no worries. Just tell me if I'm getting to the heart of what you're asking me. But,
sure.
Ultimately, like I talk to my team all the time, and they're probably sick of me saying it, but I tell people that from a marketing standpoint, our job is to win the heart and win the minds, and then you win the wallet.
I hear that.
Okay. And so, but that's not, that's not a discrete thing. It's not like you can say on Monday, hey, did we win the Hard Mine today?
Right. Fair enough.
It's an ongoing process, and it's a destination that you never get to. You constantly have to continue because there's always a competitor. There's always an event. There's always a new pursuit of time that, people could be going, towards rather than what you're trying to do.
Absolutely.
And so we're trying to climb a hill. I'm not going to say we're at the top of it because I just don't accept that at this moment in time. But I assume once we do get to the top of the hill, like at least from my perspective, there's, you don't just get to stay there. You got to keep doing what you need to do to stay, to be there, and then ideally find bigger hills to climb. So and what I mean by that is at the end of the day, we've got a strong fan base and I love our fans. But it's a constant thing. We have a lot of fans that have been with us since the founding of the team, in Tennessee, at least,
right,
in the late 90s. And those fans are getting older and, they're going to age out. And so you, like any product, you have to continually fill your pipeline with new customers. And doing so, a new customer who's just coming to the Titans in 2020, they're going to look, sound, and a little different than the ones that came to us in 1999. Right. They're going to have different needs, different attitudes, and different, activities. And we're going to have to be sensitive to all those things to, position our brand to service them and what they want and meet them where they are. And again, that's a constant thing, and the way that looks today, especially in today's, media and entertainment landscape, it could look very different, in August of 21. For sure. And so we have to stay on top of that. And so when you say what are we trying to accomplish? It's just to continue to win over new fans, to deepen these relationships, so that we're always high on their consideration set. Right. And if you allow me to be greedy,
Go for it.
That to me is the here and now.
Right.
But I believe that, with the strength of this organization and the strength of our brand and the strength of our leadership, we can be the team of Nashville, the team of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And I think we can be a nationwide brand known for excellence, excitement, and entertainment. The same way that, other top sports teams are known nationally. So that's the long-term goal.
For sure. And I appreciate that. And I know you definitely have a fan in Dallas. We have a radio partner, Fishbowl Radio Network there in Dallas. And my station chief there, Paul, is a huge Tennessee Titans fan. So you're on your way, man. At least with that one guy, right. I know for sure. I know
I appreciate
that. No worries. And I'm glad you answered the way that you answered, because one of the things we're always trying to convey to Startup Nation that this, marketing, it's a never ending process. There is no instance where you're like, you know what, I got him now. I don't really have to do anything anymore. Right. And we're talking about, a franchise in the NFL. And even you just said, and you just heard Startup Nation, it's a continuous process, to kind of engage with the fans, or in your case, Startup Nation, engage with your client base or your customer base. So I definitely appreciate that answer, my man, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you're trying for sustained success, there's really no other choice.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. And speaking of that and partnerships and local revenue, I wanted to ask you about this because I was actually covering a webinar with Sportico. Sportico did a webinar where they give team valuations and stuff like that, and they broke down team revenue and things of that nature of all the teams in the NFL. And coming to find out that the NFL is expected, based by Roger Goodell's projections, that the NFL is going to be a $25 billion brand in 2025, which is just bananas to think about. But I want to ask you this because because in that webinar, you had Stephen Jones of the Dallas Cowboys, you had Kevin DeMoff of the LA Rams in that revenue. And they talked about this importance of driving local revenue. And so I'm curious about obviously if you can't give me all the tea, I definitely understand that. But what is that, that strategy when it comes to building that local revenue for the Tennessee Titans?
So when people talk about local revenue in the context of sports teams, it's usually, the two major streams you're talking about are ticket sales and then corporate partnerships.
Gotcha.
And then, underneath that, you've got like merchandise, food and beverage, things of that nature. And then increasingly, there's, ancillary events in the building outside of sports that help to drive revenue as well. So, tickets is pretty self-explanatory. And a lot of what we talked about, up until now is sort of, driving the passion of the fan base to inspire them to come out rather than sit on their couch and watch.
Right.
So that's what winning the hearts, winning the minds is all about, is to really inspire that passion and generate action. And then from a corporate partnership standpoint, it's really about, what we want to go to the market, the corporate partnerships marketplace, and say, we can connect you, you and your business to a large, diverse, and passionate fan base that will help drive your business results.
Right.
And so our biggest partner is our naming rights partner, Nissan.
Of course.
And so, talk about having your brand and your products literally all on our stadium. You are connecting with our fan base. You will be top of mind. And you will get a rub off of fan affinity, when that sort of purchase decision comes up and they're ready to look at cars. And your association with the Titans will create value in that whole funnel, that whole decision-making process with our fans that ultimately will provide a return on your investment. And so that's what we offer. And then in doing so, it's not just about, putting your name on our marquee. Our team is also crafted or tasked with coming up with innovative and compelling marketing programs that we can execute together. That again will, the way I put it is we offer full funnel solutions.
Gotcha.
And what I mean by that is, if you're just looking for top of the funnel brand awareness, we got you. Okay. Because we can do that, because we have a lot of brand power in this marketplace, and we can bring your brand along with us. But we can also go all the way down funnel and help you generate conversions as well. We can help you collect data. We can, incentivize purchases. There's any number of marketing solutions we can develop, irregardless of what your objectives are. And so for us, again, going back to you never get there, approach.
Right, for sure.
So in order to effectively, live into that promise of delivering, these marketing solutions, we have to be on top of all marketing tactics that are out there, all mediums. Increasingly, we're very digital heavy in terms of our partnerships. A lot of folks really want to tap into our storytelling and content generation capabilities. So again, going back to that example I gave you earlier with the mini documentary, that was all produced in-house. And so we can take that production capability and tell stories and then attach brands to it. And last year, our hotel partner, for example, wanted to tell stories about Nashville. So, we did these profiles of players. And then as part of it, we wove into it, you're new to Nashville when you get drafted here, or when you start playing for the Titans. What do you like about the city? Where do you go? Things of that nature. And so it was very organic in the sense that you're learning about the player, you're learning interesting things that you might not hear in your typical interview. And then you're tying into this brand equity that the hotel partner wanted to talk about, in the sense of, hey, when you come to Nashville, you stay here, and here are some of the things you can do while you're in town. So it's all very organic and not as commercial, for lack of better words, commercial-ish. Make up words while we're on this.
It's all good.
But
it's a new normal, man. I feel like it's okay to make up new words at the very least.
I feel I can, man.
Right.
That's so that's the thing. Like we bring different opportunities, and we make them bespoke and customized to your brand, and we help make you big and impactful with our fan base.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sitting up here looking at some of your corporate sponsors like Black Tie Moving and Genesis Diamonds and Kroger and Lyft and stuff like that. I'm curious, what are some of the, you talked about that that approach to building that funnel when it comes to that brand awareness for those corporate sponsors. What are some of the craziest kind of ideas for marketing that you kind of seen come across your desk that you came up with you and your team that you're like, nah, we can't do that. We can't do that. Any story? I mean, maybe you can't tell me exactly what the plan was.
What's on the cutting room floor?
Yeah, pretty much. But any stories like that?
Well,
whatever you can share, it's fine by me.
Well, we have a couple in the lab right now that I don't want to break.
Fair enough.
Break the news on.
Fair enough.
But nothing too crazy in the sense of what were you thinking kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But some of the fun things that we've done, we do this video series on super fans.
Okay.
And you think in terms of when you hear super fan, you think, these big, perhaps a couple drinks in dudes, yelling loud and this, that, and the other.
Right.
But my favorite one that we did last year was about these two older women and who called themselves Fire and Ice.
Okay.
And my guess is they're mid to late 60s, if not older, right?
Mm-hmm.
And every week they get dressed up. They get these, Fire wears these bright red gowns, and Ice wears these light blue gowns, and they wear masks, like they're going to the opera kind of thing.
Right.
They have like a 1950s light blue, I think it's a Chevy or some sort that they drive in.
Wow.
And it's just like you just didn't see that coming.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I just think that I'm sure this isn't as wacky as you were a story as you were looking for when you asked the question. But what I love about football is that it's just such a broad palette, man. You just so many people tap into it for so many different reasons. Like if you had told me that there was these older, grandma ladies who just had this burning passion for Titans football to the extent that they gear their whole, weekends around it in this really flamboyant and aggressive way.
Right.
I wouldn't, like I said, you don't see that coming. So, that was fun. Another fun one was, last year we did a content series about the players and their tattoos. It was called Titans Inked.
Okay.
And Roger Saffold, who's a starting offensive lineman and one of the biggest human beings I've ever stood next to.
Right.
And I'm 6'6" and 240 myself, and I don't even rate compared to him.
Wow. And
he has a tattoo of Marilyn Monroe on his forearm.
Interesting.
And it's like, what's up with that, man? You know what I mean?
Right.
And it turns out his mother's name is Norma Jean, which is Marilyn Monroe's real name.
Right.
And so that inspired him to put a Marilyn Monroe tattoo on his forearm. And so it's just, like I said, I wish I had something a little more slapstick for you, but it's just the things you run into in this job, it ends up being pretty varied and fun and interesting. But I've only been here a year. I might have some crazier stuff for you after another year.
I hear that. Well, you're definitely welcome to come back on the show. But, you brought up something interesting, and I just thought about it being here in Memphis, West Tennessee. And stuff like that. It's like a great brand. Sometimes it kind of makes your job a little easier, because I can't tell you how many times I see, you talked about the two women with the cars. I can't tell you how many cars I see tightened out, man. And they go crazy. I've seen Titans emblems on the back of the side mirrors. I've seen rim Titans, on the rim spinning and stuff like that. Man, they get kind of crazy, but it just goes to show.
People want to represent. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But it just goes to show, when you have a good brand, not that you should settle for it selling itself, selling itself like we talked about earlier, but it really does kind of make your job just a little bit easier. So I appreciate you sharing all of that, man.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because look, I'm a mixed metaphors here, right? But sure. Doing marketing for an NFL team is you're born on at least second base, right?
Fair enough. That's fair. That's fair.
You come from the startup world where you're starting out. You're not even in the stadium, right?
Right. Exactly.
like you're hoping to get some at bats, right?
Exactly.
So I'm not like deluded in the sense that it wasn't, it's not my marketing acumen that put us on second base to start. Like,
I got you.
you're an NFL franchise, that helps. But I will tell you that, when I first got here, and I'm not, it takes a village to get this stuff done, including a winning football team.
Sure.
But, we weren't as resonant in Nashville a year ago as we are today. And a lot of that has to do with the team. And they got it done on the field last year in an exciting way. But I also think, and I've been told this, that, in the past, we weren't as aggressive from a marketing standpoint, so that even if you did have that, that production and excitement on the field, we maybe weren't as prepared to capitalize on that off the field,
right,
as much. And again, this is a super competitive landscape here. Like, when I first got here, I'm like, gosh, man, like, there's so many Predators t-shirts wherever I went.
Right.
And I'm like, what about us, man?
Right.
Like,
well, I mean, when you come off a Stanley Cup berth, I mean, it
doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. It does not. No, just not.
And by the way, they do a great job as well. They're super aggressive and creative, and and part of what I've been, on my team about is like, you got to look at them.
Right.
They're selling hockey in the Deep South, man. That's not easy.
That's not an easy trick.
Right. So like, and they're doing a great job. And so we got to step up our game. And so, yeah, it definitely helps having the power of the NFL behind you. This is a football country. It's a football region.
Right.
But again, going back to you can't rest, because again, we weren't it last year.
Right.
Right. And again, the team is the biggest driver of that, no doubt. But like, we definitely have raised the game from a marketing standpoint. We've done more to be in people's faces. We've done more to sort of create access and interest into the team. And you have to do that regardless of how, quote unquote, good your product is. Otherwise, you'll wake up someday and you'll see slippage.
For sure. And there's something to be said to capitalize on that, because I mean, there's been plenty of times, even outside of sports, where you've been kind of gifted this thing, and then all of a sudden, man, the right person the wrong person at the top, man, can really just kind of throw that thing off a cliff. So I definitely understand.
All right, Startup Nation, so we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life. This fresh coat of the Startup Life has been sprayed on nice and smooth by Wagner and the Flexio series of paint sprayers. Startup Nation, my wife decided she wanted to rehab her childhood home. The goal was to fix it up and invite a nice family to rent it out. We knew one of the biggest jobs we had to undertake was painting. However, from the walls, the cabinets, and even the siding outside, it was going to be a big task. As entrepreneurs with a company to run, we knew this was going to take up a lot of our time, which is why we decided to get a paint sprayer. And after much research, we decided to go with the sprayer from the Flexio series from Wagner. Startup Nation, these sprayers are top-notch because of its flexibility to paint or stain walls, furniture, cabinets, and more. It's 10 times faster than using a paintbrush, which was a big selling point for us. And you can paint or stain right from the can. It's also easy to clean in 5 minutes, and being great for indoor and outdoor projects, a paint sprayer from the Flexio series clearly needs to be part of the arsenal in your garage. So if you're ready to stain your deck, or like me, fill your daughter's request of a bubblegum pink room, up your game with a paint sprayer from the Flexio series by Wagner. Take it from me, your time will thank you. This episode is sponsored by Swanson Health. Startup Nation, Swanson Health has been producing quality vitamins and supplements, foods, healthy home, and self-care products for over 50 years, since 1969. From the heart of America, Swanson Health carries over 20,000 wellness products at a great value. Pick up all of your favorite health products, plus discover new ones for your wellness routine all while leaving money in your pocket. If you want to try any of Swanson Health's great products for yourself, use code STARTUP20 for 20% off at swanson.com. We have a link there in the show notes if you listen to the replay. This episode of The Startup Life is powered by Colony Spark. Startup Nation, with our economy in flux, there is a lot of mixed messaging out there. If there was ever a time to take control of the narrative and let your customers know that you're here to serve them, it's now. And that's why you have a friend in Colony Spark. Colony Spark is an omni-channel marketing agency that believes in the power of community to ignite your business. They have helped companies across many industries with lead generation, revenue growth, and more to put them on the path to success. My guy Bill Murphy and his team are very good at what they do. How do I know this? Because not many SEO companies have the stamp of approval of being partnered with Google. Yes, that Google. So I want you to go to www.colonyspark.com/startup to schedule a meeting today. In that meeting, you will review your current marketing activity, receive actionable advice on how to pivot and grow, and ask any marketing questions you may have on navigating over the next few months. Look, Startup Nation, I know things may seem uncertain right now, but if you are looking for a business partner that can help light the way, go with Colony Spark, where they firmly believe in business helping business. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life. Startup Nation, we are actually wrapping up with Gil Beverly, Chief Marketing and Revenue Officer of the Tennessee Titans. I actually want to shift gears just a little bit because just not too long ago, Jason Wright was hired as team president of the Washington Football Club, becoming the first African-American team president of an NFL franchise. As an African-American yourself in a C-suite of an NFL franchise, you know, when you heard that news and when you saw that, how important was that for you? What were your first thoughts when you saw that?
First thoughts were, that's an impressive man out there, and I'm hoping for his success, and it's awesome to see that. Certainly, he's inheriting a team in a challenging environment, given some of the things that are going around that franchise. It's always interesting because on one hand, you want to celebrate these things, right? Yeah. And be excited and sort of say, oh, this is a landmark for our culture and our race. But there's also a flip side of that. It's like, that man's highly educated, highly trained. He's a former football player. He's spent however many years working in the management consulting space, which, your job is to be smart if you're in that. What I mean? Like, so why shouldn't he be the president of the Washington Redskins? Absolutely. There have been plenty of people, clearly, no disrespect the Washington football team. Right. And there's clearly been a number of folks that have taken a stab at that job that maybe haven't been as successful as they wanted. So whereas I do think it's great that this ground's been broken, but this isn't, and I'm forgetting, his name's Kevin.
Jason Wright.
Jason Wright. Yeah. Yeah. Jason, like he deserves to be there. Like so it's not, so it's groundbreaking in one end, but it's also, of course he has that opportunity because he's an extremely qualified, hardworking, and deeply experienced individual. And so I hope for his success. I think hopefully it paves the way for others, who again, frankly, are deserving and just waiting for that right opportunity. But it's exciting. And, like I said, I just really hope that he's successful.
For sure. I appreciate you sharing that. And, going back to something you were saying earlier about being part of the Nashville community and stuff like that, let's be honest, there's a lot of, unrest going on, people bringing up, about social, inequality and racial inequality and things of that nature, as, an African-American in the C-suite of an NFL team in the South. What kind of role can you play to kind of help bridge that divide, bridge that gap? What role do you think you have in that, or if any at all?
You have any ideas for me?
Fair enough. That's fair. That's fair. That is very fair.
Everything you just laid out, I have zero experience in, and I'm finding my way. Right.
Gotcha.
So I'm not sure when this will air, but at the time that we're having this discussion, we're a couple days removed from the Titans, choosing not to practice,
right.
Coming out of, some of the goings on around the country.
For sure.
And that elicited a response,
Of course.
positive and negative. And, I'll be honest with you, the day after everything happened, I was very taken aback about some of the negativity and the intensity of the negativity from folks.
Got you.
Towards our athletes, towards our franchise. And it's hard to see. It's hard to watch.
Right.
I'm not going to lie to you.
That's fair.
Unfortunately, and I've been telling people, as someone who's in marketing, a business leader and things of that nature, by nature, you like to think of yourself as a problem solver.
Right.
How can we find common ground on this situation? How can we thread the needle? And what I'm finding so far is that it's hard because there's a line that some people just are drawing for themselves, which is, if you don't think like I do, or if your experience is different from mine, then I'm going to have a problem with you and how you express that.
Right.
And, and as a franchise, we've decided that, we support our players. We support their right to articulate themselves. And we believe in a lot of the same things they believe in from the standpoint of, we still have a ways to go in terms of social justice and equality and eliminating racism. And we are proactive and, we are unapologetic about, feeling that way and working towards those ends. And, our hope is that we can explore that and pursue those ends in ways that are unifying, and that are positive. But, it's clear that not everyone's going to perceive it that way.
Right.
And that there's not necessarily always a way to bridge, the gap with those people.
For sure.
And so, you're gonna lose some folks. But our hope is that we win more than we lose. Our hope is that we can, deliver, a different perspective that some might not get, from their own lives.
Right.
And frankly, our hope is that we can communicate and impact younger folks who still, whose minds are still kind of wet clay, right? And they might be a little bit more open than older folks.
Right.
But these things aren't easy, or simple.
Of course.
And, like I said, I'm still kind of feeling my way around it because, I've spent most of my life, in Chicago, New York, and Philadelphia, and the, mindsets are a little different. So you're getting an understanding of the culture down here and all that sort of stuff and how these issues play out here is definitely an ongoing education for me.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. I kind of share a lot of your sentiments in the sense of like, I think we just have to have a conversation, just have a conversation. Cause me personally, I just think that like, to quote Maya Angelou, we're more alike than unalike. And I think we just have those conversations. I think we'll see that a lot of us have dreams. A lot of us have goals. A lot of us have things that we want to accomplish, and we can build on that. You know what I mean? And it's okay to, disagree about certain things, but I think the hardest part, like you just said, is getting everybody to the table and having that conversation. So I appreciate your honesty and your transparency about that, my man.
No problem. It's it won't be the last time I'm asked about it. So
for sure.
I'm definitely thinking it all through and how to talk about these issues. And
Absolutely.
It's definitely it's definitely a thing, and we all need to be engaged in it.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. So, as we wrap up, man, and really quick shout out to Launch Tennessee and the Kettner Group for setting up this conversation with GB, man. We've had a fantastic time, and he's dropped some amazing knowledge that I'm pretty sure on Startup Nation you want to put in your entrepreneurial toolkit. So, GB, when you think about your career, and the scope of the next chapter for you and stuff like that, first going back, what do you think was the turning point that really kind of set you up for the success that you're experiencing today? Was it the NFL internship? Was it something that happened in school? What was that turning point for you where he's like, you know what, I'm on my way?
That's a good question. I think at some point, I think it goes back to my job working for University of Pennsylvania's basketball program.
Okay.
So that was my first job in sports, and getting a real understanding of what goes into competing. Because when you're on the coaching staff, even though I was like, I would say low man on the totem pole, but right. I don't even know if I was on the totem pole. You know what I mean? So, but your life is centered around preparing this team to compete. Again, every day, and the level of detail orientation, preparation. No details too small. And by the way, if you screw up a small detail, Coach Dunphy's gonna let you know about it in no uncertain terms. And so it was like, again, mixing metaphors. It's like a hockey goalie, right? You can make 95 saves, but if you miss 5,
right?
Like no one cares about the 95. They care about the 5 you let in,
right?
And it's the same thing. And you learn a certain standard and what it takes. And so coming out of that, I don't think I had the discipline and passion for what I was doing in life until I was exposed to that. And it's like, this is what it's going to take to be successful, no matter what I want to do, whether it's sports or whatever. And so from there, as a much more serious student when I went to grad school than I was in undergrad, and I was much more competitive. And I just sort of have applied that to every job I've had in every role I've had since then. And it's worked out reasonably well for me.
For sure. And you know what you do in the industry that you're in and the trajectory that you're on, it is really competitive, man. What do you think has been your competitive advantage in that regard? Is it the work ethic? Is it something else? What has been the competitive advantage for Gil Beverly?
Well, I don't want to get into the world of humble bragging. You know what I mean? But you asked me a question that kind of leads itself to it. Like my sense of things is that, like, I'm mindful that you're fortunate to be in this space, right? And to have these type of opportunities, and you want to be able to maximize it and kind of get the opportunities that you want for as long as you can. And so my attitude's always been, all right, well, what's everybody else doing? All right, I need to do at least that, and then I need to do more. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to look around you and just kind of figure out, what's the standard, and so you understand it, and then you try to exceed it as best you can. And in doing so, I always look at it like, when you're on a basketball team in high school or whatever, it's like, you compete like, heck, against your partner, your buddy, right? Like, I'm gonna go at you at practice. And so you can make me better, I can make you better. And then so we can go win, right?
Right.
And that's kind of how I look at corporate America as well, or whatever organization I'm in. Like, I'm gonna raise the bar as high and as hard as I can.
Right.
And I hope that you raise the bar too, because I'm gonna steal whatever you did to raise the bar.
Right.
And then we're gonna raise it again, and then it becomes this virtuous cycle, right? But to me, it kind of starts with competition. And then, frankly, if you're not finding the competition within your own organization, then look out around you. Like, trust me, I have a list of other franchises that I have a lot of respect for. And every week I'm checking their social feed, their websites. I'm looking at what they're doing.
Right.
And I'll steal from them too.
Fair
you know what I mean? But when I do it, I want whatever we're doing to be better than what they did.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, like, sort of, bringing that competition to everything you do in a positive way, in a way that,
of course,
grows the pie around you, is something that I think is key. And then the other thing, which frankly, I've learned, I don't want to say late in life, because I hope I have some time, but the people piece, and how you treat those around you,
big facts.
And being a positive force in other people's lives. That's something that, frankly, getting into this role in Nashville and seeing how much of an impact you can have from a senior level into the organization as a whole and into individuals has been really eye-opening for me. And, because earlier in my career, frankly, I wish I could say earlier, like not too long ago, I probably over focused on that first piece, the competition piece. Like, let's go, let's crush everything around us. Let's steal from our competitors and do better than them. And if you weren't on board, then I probably have a problem with you. And now as I get older, it's like, well, why aren't you on board? Are we giving you everything you need to be on board? Is there a problem at home that keeps you from being on board? Like it's rare that someone's on your team and that doesn't want to perform.
For sure.
Those people are out there, but it's usually more to it. And as a leader and representative of your organization, it's incumbent upon you to look a little deeper and try to diagnose that, and then to help people overcome. And so, I would say in my evolution, and like I said, unfortunately for me, this has been the last 2 or 3 year kind of thing, as opposed to maybe I wish it were last 10 to 15 year kind of thing. But it's definitely helped me grow as an executive and as a person. And and kind of like everything we've talked about, there's no real destination to it. Hopefully I'm even better and discover more next year than I know now.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing that. And before I ask the last question, Gil, I just want to say thank you so much for and being very generous with your time and sharing all of your amazing content and knowledge for Startup Nation. We are very much appreciative of all of that for sure. But now I'm going to turn the microphone over to you, man. Look, there's somebody out there in Startup Nation feeling a little discouraged, feeling a little down on themselves. Give some words of encouragement to take us out for today, if you don't mind, good sir.
What I would say is, success is not a straight line. And I think if you're the type of person who would listen to your show and your podcast, and if you're out there trying to do something in the entrepreneurial space, you're type A, you're driven, and you're geared towards success. And I think a lot of things in life kind of tell you erroneously that it is a straight line. You finish first grade, you go to second. You get out of elementary school, you go to junior high, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You get to grad school, or you go to college, then grad school, and you get whatever accreditation you need, and you just keep it moving, right? And the reality of it is that very few people, if you look at my resume, you know what that Chris Rock line is, like, you don't meet real people, you meet their representative,
right?
And your resumes and these types of interviews, that they're sanitized versions of the reality, right? Like, I've had more setbacks and some spectacular ones than I care to admit. And it's just about, believing in yourself, having humility, learning from, whatever failures you come to. Again, it sounds trite and cliche, but that's really what it is. It's like belief in yourself. And I think the humility to learn, and that was important to me. I'd had a lot of positive reinforcement in my career. And so it's easy to sort of say, oh, I got this thing down. But when you do kind of run up against adversity, to really take a hard look at yourself and sort of say, well, what are you bad at? Why are these things happening? And to adjust appropriately. But once you do that, if you're talented, if you mean well, and if you are service oriented in terms of both your teammates and your customers, and you're willing to listen and work hard, ultimately, you might not be on the slope you want to be on in terms of, we're not all on that hockey stick,
Right.
Sometimes it's more gradual than that, but that's ultimately what it takes. And you will be successful. You just kind of have to keep it, keep going. And it's advice that's simple, but not easy. That's really, that's all I know. Let's put it that way.
For sure.
The one thing I'd like to add is just about my ambitions and the Tennessee Titans ambition as well.
Yeah.
Is, we really, this year more than any, has taught our organization and me personally that we have to be about more than our product. That we have what I refer to as cultural capital. In the sense, that we can make a difference in different areas of life. I joked around with some of the people, close to me that, once the tornado and COVID hit, I felt like I was running a community nonprofit as much as being a marketing leader.
Right.
Just because we knew that we had to, the tornado hit, like we literally were out in the streets handing out sleeping bags and flashlights and things of that nature. And then with COVID, we're trying to figure out how can we promote local small businesses. and, give some direction as to who's open. Because I remember it's hard to remember the early days of the pandemic, but it was like, it wasn't clear as to what was actually available to you. And, so many businesses were suffering, and we knew that we could provide a platform to promote that, promote people. And one of the decisions we've made is that that's not going to stop. Whenever this pandemic stops, that doesn't necessarily, we're not going to stop. We view this as central to our mission. And, I've just kind of adopted that as well, in the sense that, I don't know that my next act will be in sports marketing. At this point, it's like, well, how else can you make contributions?
Right.
I don't know what that looks like, but, I guess what I would say to, your entrepreneurs that make it, I do think that there's something, I can't draw a direct line or whatever, but I believe your business will do better the more that you look around you and ask yourself, how can I contribute outside of my products?
For sure.
And so that's something that we're embracing, and something that I'm embracing as well.
Awesome stuff. And that's going to wrap up this session of The Startup Life. We want to once again thank Gil Beverly for coming on the show. GB, thank you so much, my man.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This was actually fun. I appreciate your allowing me to tell some of my story.
No worries. And as always, Startup Nation, if you have an idea, be about that life, The Startup Life.
If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show, as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline, or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new startup blog, where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life, the startup life.